Go ahead, Sinek.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sinek, aka Sean, and I'm going to present today on Tailscale and how to get started on that. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Cool. So just quick questions. I'm going to make this interactive. I'm going to keep this pretty informal. So I'll just do a statement at the beginning of this. I am new to Tailscale, so there's a lot of things I haven't tried yet. But I've got the basic functionality working and tested it in my home lab. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. It's a cool VPN alternative solution out there that's really easy to use. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. And I wanted to throw out one question here. Anybody here, has anybody here used Tailscale before?
Yeah, in a limited capacity, I have.
Cool. Okay. My next question would be if anybody used it in production for a company, but I think that is no, since everybody was pretty quiet. But yeah,
No.
so let me. Oh, sorry. What was that?
That was a no.
Oh. So I'll jump in here. So, and I don't have too many slides. I'm going to try to go more of do a demo. But kind of like what is Tailscale? So Tailscale is a super easy WireGuard based VPN solution. And it's a hosted solution. So nothing you need to buy an appliance for. It allows you to create a decentralized mesh network. Instead of like a hub and spoke system like we would normally use with a lot of other VPN solutions, where you'd have one or two central VPN aggregators where everybody connects into. This allows you to have multiple nodes, and you can actually connect from that one. From one node, you can connect to all the nodes or specific nodes, however you specify it in the rule sets, which I'll go over in a bit. It is built on open source software. A lot of Tailscale is open source. It's based on WireGuard, which is open source, and their mobile applications are open source. Their client software is open source, and a lot of the technology that runs their backend is open source. But it's not 100% open source. Like I said, it is a SaaS solution. If you're interested in a open source kind of, I wouldn't say fork, but it's like an alternative that uses the Tailscale clients. There's a software tool called Headscale that is completely open source, and that allows you to use a lot of that same Tailscale functionality with the Tailscale clients. If that's something that interests you guys in the future, I could do maybe a demo on that. I haven't played around with it though. Another cool feature is that you don't need to do any port forwarding. So you can run the server client from a mobile phone, from a laptop, from a server, and you can deploy it via different mechanisms, via like Docker. You can do, I believe there's Windows, there's Mac, there's iOS, Android, all these different types of applications. So that it does support multiple ways to install it. And the other benefit to it is that it is free for personal use. So that's up to 100 devices, and that's like 100 nodes that are in your network, and up to 3 users for free. So if it's at home, it could be you, your wife, your kid, or whatnot. And if you want to expand from there, there is paid for options. And this image here is kind of an example of what the nodes look like. So let's say this is you. Let's say this is you in your iPhone or Android phone, and you have a server over here in New York. You have another computer in was this, Detroit. You might have something up here in Washington. This is another user. This is a user in San Francisco, and this is some database in Austin, Texas. And each of these devices can have a Tailscale client installed, and you can actually connect to those directly. And then you can also have an option where you can actually egress out through that device, that client as well. It's optional, but every client, I think it's almost every client except for the iPhone client, you can set up a way to egress out of that client and use the outbound internet connection. So whatever the outbound IP, the external IP address of this device and egress traffic wise, you can connect to this device if it was set up that way, and then egress out to the internet from it if that's configured. It's the same for any of these, and you can set up high availability and some fault tolerance as well. So demo, I'm going to go straight into setting up Tailscale. So I have can everybody still see my screen? I got this terminal open here.
Yep.
Cool. So the easiest way to deploy Tailscale, at least in my opinion, is Docker. Since I'm kind of in a Docker world, I know a lot of you guys use Docker as well. That's how I'm going to present how to install it, like on a server, for example. So for this example, I have a Kali Linux box is going to be my quote unquote server, but it could be a desktop. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, it's very flexible. And you have if you guys have Docker installed, you can use Docker Compose with a Docker Compose file to pre-configure everything. So, and I'll share this in the Meetup text channel as well too. So I'm gonna do I'm gonna cat this file here. So this is what you need for deploying the Tailscale Docker container, as well as the partnered Nginx container that's with it as well. So let me share this, and I will paste this in the channel. And so yeah, that if anybody wants to follow along, they can. You can use that if you like. Before I jump, I actually kind of jump in a little too fast. So one thing you do need to do is you need to set up an account on Tailscale itself on their website. So I'm gonna share a window real quick. Let me pull it up. So here's the Tailscale website right here. And upon login, you don't really create an account per se. You actually log in with one of these supported SSO options. And so you have Google, Microsoft, GitHub, Apple. I believe you can sign in with maybe an email as well too, but don't quote me on that. The great thing about this is that it does support things like Okta and other third-party SSO options, so you're not limited to just these options. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. So if you have a different IDP solution, more than likely a Tailscale will support it. These are just the. Somebody got a question?
Yeah, I guess finish your thought, but yes.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so I was looking briefly at the Docker Compose YAML you put out there, and I didn't see any colon, stable or latest or something. So
yeah, it's using the latest. It's colon latest.
It does say colon latest, or just
Yeah.
you just left it off and it'll just always pull latest.
It's on there for the Tailscale image.
Oh, I did. Okay, so I guess I didn't see that part. I saw Tailscale /Tailscale. I didn't see anything after it.
Yeah, under image in the Docker Compose file I shared, it's set to latest for the image, but you can set it to whatever you guys want to use for that. So I do have a dummy account that I created earlier for this to log in, but like I said, you can use anything. You can create like a dummy Gmail account, or you can use a pre-existing account. It doesn't really matter. When you sign in with it, that's considered your user account is considered like one user. So if you're going to have other users sign in, they would sign in with whatever sign-in method they're going to use into your account, and you can link them together, and those become additional users. So, for example, I'm going to share this window here. So this is a test instance I created with an Apple ID to sign in to show how easy it is. The Apple one's really easy if you have an iPhone. And out of the list of options, I figured that was probably the most privacy conscious alternatives compared to the other ones. But it doesn't really matter which one you use. So when you log in here, you will get a startup screen. It's a little bit different than this. You can just should be a button that says bypass, and you can bypass that. You don't really need to worry about all these options right now. I'm going to just show you how to get the Docker piece set up. So the first thing you got to do is you're going to go to settings here, and you're going to go down to keys. And then you'll have these authentication keys. You're going to hit generate auth key, and then you're going to put a description. So I'll say test, and then you'll be able to click generate key, and a key will present. For testing, you don't need to change any of these. If you're interested in more of these options, feel free to read into these. All these are typically linked for more information in the documentation. But once you create a key and you go and you plug it into your Docker container, it will get actually voided out, and it will no longer be able to be used for another device once it's been registered to a single device. So that's something to keep in mind. That's why you don't need to, from what I'm aware of, you don't need to set reusable on here, because each time that key will stay persistent to that device. And even if you close out if you do like a Docker kill and you relaunch it, it will still leverage that key that you had saved in the file. So hit generate key and copy that. I'm not going to do that just so I don't have keys live on air here. But when you click that, you'll get a key, and then you want to copy that. What you'll then do is go back to your Docker compose file, and in here, this Tailscale auth key, you're going to plug that key in right here. And that will, when you go and spin your container up, it will go register with the Tailscale cloud and create a connection. From there, if you want, I won't go into this just yet, but there's some extra args. You can leave this line off for now. I'm just going to leave this here, but I'll go into what these two arguments are in just a hot second. And so from there, you'll just do a Docker compose up. Oops. Let's see. And spin that up. And what you'll do is when we go back here, hold on. Let me find out where my window went. Hold on. Man, I have too many windows open. Here we go. So when you go back over here to machines, you'll see that you'll have a machine that's connected. This one I set up prior, so I named it as home, and you can actually come over here and change the name to whatever you want. Otherwise, it'll just be an automatically generated name. And if you see connected, that pretty much means that everything was working as expected. You'll also get these Tailscale addresses. These addresses aren't your public IP address. It's a special Tailnet IP address. And then other devices you have will actually populate here. So these are some test devices I hooked up, and which I'll go over in just a minute and on how that works. Anybody have any questions? No. Cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, observation. I mean, so this is I guess a replacement for WireGuard, right? It's not meant to work with it, it's meant to replace it. Sounds like.
It's like an
So
alternative way of
alternative.
using WireGuard. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a replacement for WireGuard, maybe because it's based on WireGuard or whatever. But it's like you got this management stuff and it's all centralized and you have to go to like tailscale.com, you have to create an account. Then you're like, I'm going to generate some keys, so they hold your keys. So you get some sort of a benefit of having a centralized dashboard, I guess, like this. But from the perspective of like the P of VPN, I'm not not your keys, not your privacy. I don't know. I'm just curious if I'm missing something here.
Well, in regards to the privacy aspect of it, I'm not going to dive. I can't dive into like exactly how all the keys are handled with Tailscale. So that's something you can dive into more.
I guess it boils down to kind of like when you say, I'm on this website, which we can see. I generate a key, right? And literally that's an authentication key for an end node to use the VPN software to connect in, correct? And pass their private data?
Yeah, I'll be going over in a
Okay.
bit
Okay.
on how
Just
to
want to clear.
actually
Sure.
sign and control more of the connection to
All right.
your thing. So
Thank you. All right.
we'll get there
That's
in
all.
just a bit. So, but yeah, good question. So let me real quick. So I'm just trying to see what I have here. I'm going to share. So 1 second. Okay, so just making sure I'm not sharing anything I shouldn't be sharing. Yeah, I think we're good. I like to share things live by accident, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, so I am going to go, if you click onto the machine itself, um, ignore this subnets piece right here and the routing piece. This is what I'm going to go over in the next section. But if you go down here to the machine details, you'll get details on your connection, where they're the Tailscale IP address, the endpoint. This is a VPN endpoint that I have that is where this is connecting out of, and you can get just some information like that. So one thing you can do is on this client I have here. Let's say whoever connects to this client, I want them to connect to other things in my network. So if I have a client, and let's say somewhere else in my network, I have a web server, for example, I want somebody who's got maybe an Android phone or iPhone that's using Tailscale. I want them to be able to get to that web server, which is in the same network as, let's say, this home server that we've set up. You can like allow this certain CIDR blocks of addresses within your network. So to do that, if you go back to that, let me pull it up. Go back to, I'm just gonna go back here real quick. Real quick, hold on. So if I cat that Docker Compose, so this advertise, this dash advertise dash routes flag that you have under this extra args. This is like extra arguments to the command that's being ran when the container is being spun up. This will will allow you to advertise those subnets. So that's why when I have this one here listed, and I spun it up earlier. When we go back to here, you'll see that I have this subnet showing up here. So you might see this other one here. This is an old one, so ignore that. And you can actually choose which ones to have active. So this is an old one. I don't know why it's still showing up. It should not be here listed anymore. But I don't know if that's some sort of interface issue with Tailscale. So that'll allow you to, which I'll show in a minute, like allow you to connect to these other devices within your network, like you would with a normal VPN. Another feature of the VPN or setting up a client is allowing you to egress out of that client. So let's say I want to connect from my mobile phone that has a Tailscale client to this server that I'm running this on, and I want the traffic to egress out of that server. That's where this exit node setting allows you to do, and it'll allow you to exit the traffic to exit out through that client itself. So if we go back here, that's where this -- advertise exit node flag comes in, and adding that and relaunching things that will give you that feature here. And then you can choose within here to have it turn on and off. So whether or not you have that flag enabled, you can uncheck it and disable it. You'll also see that I have this waiting approval that pops up here. You may not have that enabled by default, but if you go into settings and you go to, let me see if I can find it, user management. So any new users being added to your account, you can have them be approved manually. So that's this little box here. And the device management, which requires approvals when new devices are added to a network, that's checked right here. These aren't enabled by default, and I should have disabled them for the demo, but having them enabled will require that manual approval methods. That way, if somebody gets a hold of your account and wants to connect a device to it and you don't authorize it, they'll connect. Well, they'll show up in here, but they won't. You'll have to go in here and manually approve them for them to actually get access to the network. So it's just an additional layer of security. So let me demo connecting my phone to this. So give me 1 second. Let me try to share my screen without sharing all my stuff. All right, so bear with me 1 second. So I might lose you guys for a second because I'm gonna be switching over to my mobile phone. I should have recorded this, but hey, doing it live. So 1 second.
I'm just curious, what tool are you using? Just using like Discord on your phone to share the screen, or something else?
Discord. So I might disconnect, and then
Nice.
it's gonna switch over to my phone, and then I'm gonna do the screen sharing from my phone, and do it from there. So you might, Magus, you're gonna have to probably switch video streams. So I'm gonna jump off my desktop and onto the phone. So 1 second.
Sort of as a side note for anybody who wants to do this in the future, I've used something called Rest Desk, which actually works for sharing out and getting remote access to like Android. It's pretty cool.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Okay, let me share my screen. So I've only done this like once during the iPhone thing I did. So Discord. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right, so let me go over here and so this is the Tailscale app on my phone. And what I did is I just downloaded it, installed it, and I up here at the top right, you'll click on here, and you'll be able to this. If you're not signed in, you'll click up here, and you'll be able to sign in. You want to use the same account you sign in on your desktop with when you set up the account. If that all connects properly, you'll get this screen. And right now I'm connected. Because I'm sharing my screen, if I disconnect, I'll probably drop off the call, so I won't do that. But I've connected, and you can actually choose your exit node. So if you I can't only it shows you where my fingers are at. You can see all the different devices in my network. You can see the home one I showed earlier, and then you can see these exit nodes at the top. So you can actually choose whether or not to use an exit node. So I'm going to, like I said, you can also click here to allow local network access. So if you're connected, when you're connected on Tailscale on your phone, it's using a VPN profile. So by default, it's going to cut off all connectivity to like local network devices. So, but if you want to be able to connect to a device on your network that's not maybe through your VPN, you can check this box to the right or down here and have that enabled. And you can toggle on and off whether or not you want to use the exit node or not. From there, you can go back up and get this VPN settings. This will enable VPN on demand. You can actually have the Tailscale VPN turn on automatically if you are on Wi-Fi or on cellular, and you can choose whether or not it connects. The VPN turns on if you're connected to certain Wi-Fi.
Your audio is cut out.
Can you still hear me?
It goes in and out.
Oh, sorry. I'll make this quick. So yeah, this is pretty user customizable. I'll go back out. Those are the main things to really worry about. I'm not going to get too detailed into all the other apps, but you can see here that I'm connected. So one thing I did mention earlier is connecting to devices that are behind that. Like, for example, I have on my desktop earlier, I showed that Docker setup that I have running with as a Tailscale node in my, what they call it, the Tailnet. And my iPhone here, I'm connected to that same Tailnet. And since that the Docker container I showed, I set up the routes to that other subnet. I have a dummy web server I set up on another box that was within that CIDR range earlier. So if I go over to Firefox and I go and I try to connect to this internal network, I have a JavaScript React Docker container that's running on this other server, and it's running within that network. So if I connected this, I should connect to it. So yeah, this is the screen I wanted to get. So this is showing that routing to that other device. So yeah, I'm going to drop off here. That's what I wanted to show on the mobile device here. So I'm going to stop broadcasting, and I'm going to jump back over to my desktop. So give me 1 second. Okay. You guys hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Yes, sir.
Sweet. So let me go and share my screen again so you guys see this page.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And just to give you some context on that web server I had that I just pulled up that showed the React page, this one right here, that is a Docker container I have running. on it's let me see, do I have a link to it? I can share a link to it. So that's just a React, just a basic bare bones sample React Docker container. So any questions anybody have at all? No? Cool. All right. From there, you can it comes into access control. And in regards to access control, from here you can set up ACLs that control what devices have access to, or I'll say no, everything's a node on the quote unquote tailnet. So this will allow you to control what nodes have access to other nodes, and then if you have routes that are advertised, you can actually specify what nodes have access to those devices behind the routes. So that example earlier I showed was that JavaScript React web server that was on this 10.66.6.105 IP address on port 80. So this allowed that connectivity to go through. If you want to allow access from your device, so everything gets tagged automatically. So these machines, by default, they're all members, but you can also add additional tags. So if you had, if you wanted to tag certain devices as like users, for example, and certain devices as like servers or clients or things like that, you could add those additional tags to it. And then under the ACLs, you can say, okay, any source that equals tag, client or user can have access to XYZ device, and you can use it all with tags. And this is an example of using a tag here. So so if I create a new ACL here, I can say, all members can have access to my client that's been tagged home, which is the Docker container that we set up earlier. If you didn't want that connectivity, you can go and pull that away by just removing it. So pretty simple. I'm not going to go into like too many crazy ACLs, but they do have a lot of good examples on here. Then go into like syntax, how to do the tagging, and things like that. From
Quick
there,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Specifically about the access controls. So the code that you see here, did that come from a template, or is it revealing something that was configured through the weblized sort of GUI, or did you write this from scratch? Where'd it come from?
This is like a template they give you up front, and then you can make some slight modifications to it. So,
Okay. Like pre-populated.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And a couple other features too. I'll be talking about in the next. Actually, I can share the slides here. Yeah. So I have these additional slides with additional features. So there's one feature called Magic DNS, and what that does is every device that connects to that gets connected to the telnet will get an automatic what they call a Magic DNS name assigned to it, which are these names right here. So if you want to connect to another device in your network, in your telnet, you can instead of plugging in the IP address or some other sort of address, you'll get an automatic DNS name you can just use. You can literally just type in, like, if you want to SSH to this box, let's say SSH was running on it, you can literally just go SSH, username at home, and this is anything that's on any client that's got the telnet client installed on it, the DNS automatically gets propagated, so it will look at home and know, okay, that's a device on telnet, and we're going to go route through that accordingly. So these are the features here under DNS that you can set up as well. So if you want to get the full FQDN of it, you can go to the machine and get that right here. So this is the short domain name you can use, or you can use the full domain. I'm not sure why you want to use one or the other, but I'm sure there's reasons. Other than that, some other things too, logging. All the different connections that are made are logged here. For the free version, you get pretty basic logs, just more like connectivity logs and authentication logs. If you pay for it, you do get full like network flow logs. Going into some additional features, there's these app connectors. This allows you to control which devices can connect to different third-party SaaS apps. And the big use case for this, that at least I could tell, was if you have a third-party SaaS app that you limit access to via IP allow listing, you could use this where you can give it your telnet, or sorry, your Tailscale IP addresses, and control which devices can connect to those via that IP whitelisting. There's also Tailscale SSH, and this allows you to use Tailscale to control the authorization to your SSH clients via the Tailscale access control. Taildrop, this is a cool feature that's currently not alpha. This is something that you can use for sending files between devices that are on the telnet. Telnet funnel, this is something that allows you to share a service that's behind your telnet client and share it out to the broader internet. So you don't need to punch any holes in your firewall for that. You can, let's say you have a web server that's let's say you have the Tailscale client installed on a web server, or even if it's behind, I think even if it's behind a route that's in your Tailscale network, you can choose to make that publicly facing with the Tailscale funnel feature. And that way, so if it's like a website for a web server, for example, you can have that publicly facing to the rest of the world with some additional controls in front of it. Also, Tailscale Serve, this allows you to share internally a service, a local service, across your whole entire Tailscale network. So let's say this is like a Confluence or Jira server, and you want this to be internal only. You could share it out that way. And don't forget, one thing about Tailscale is that since you can install clients on every single node in your network, and you'll have end-to-end encryption to each and every device that's on the network that way. But even if you let's say you have a printer and you can't install Tailscale on it, that's where the routes come in. You can add those CIDR blocks. The last thing I want to talk about is Tailscale Lock. This is that thing that, in regards to something that WireLock brought up regarding preventing adding additional security to your nodes and preventing nodes from being added to your network without you. I put telnet, but it's your tailnet. This will allow you to actually. This will require the nodes to be signed. And from that, if the nodes themselves are signed, they will then be able to be granted onto the network. And there's a whole entire signing process that goes in for, which is I think it's under, let's see, device management. So you have to actually have this turned off, and you can enable tail lock. There's tailnet lock here. And there's some documentation on it. I haven't played around with it yet, so I know I can't answer a lot of your questions, WireLock, but this documentation goes into how it works and how the public-private keys are used for controlling and signing the connections, and giving you more control to how the connectivity between your devices are made and how the authentication is handled. And I believe this part of the system is open source as well too. And you can get this from the client source code as well. So there's those details. The last thing I want to bring up, I didn't have time to put on the slide deck. One cool feature that they've added to was the option to have Molvad. They have a partnership with Molvad. A lot of folks here are fans of Molvad. It's a privacy-focused VPN solution, and you can set up your exit node for your telnet to go through Molvad VPN. So I don't know if you can actually bring your own Molvad account over, but you can set up a Molvad access through this dashboard. And I think you pay for it separately through here. So something to consider. Kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have for this demo. I just wanted to show everything on a high level, and kind of show you some of the features I played around with it. This is something that I'm just playing around with and experimenting with. It's nothing I'm personally going to be running in my lab, besides for experimentation purposes. But I think this could be handy for a lot of folks here that are maybe new to cybersecurity or home labs, and they don't have like a pfSense or OpenSense firewall, and they want to set up a VPN solution to securely connect back to their home network to access files or things like that. Also, if you're in the corporate sphere, this is interesting project or a product to possibly consider regarding VPN solutions, especially since it's based off WireGuard. A majority of the code out there is open source, and then there's also the completely open source version of this, which is that Headscale solution I talked about. And like I said, if anybody's interested in that, that's something we can maybe talk about in the future. But yeah, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Any questions?
I got a couple.
Oh, I knew you did.
So yeah, sorry I jumped the gun about that because my question earlier about some of the things I noticed as you were going through Tailscale, seems to be answered by the whole Headscale thing, and Headscale appears to be like the self-hosted version, right? So yeah, so that seems to be kind of the use case for Headscale over Tailscale. But I guess one thing is like, I put a question down here of like, compare contrast, like Tailscale/Headscale versus stock WireGuard, right? Like why would you use it over stock WireGuard, right? Like the mesh networking or like centralized webalized dashboard. But you already mentioned a few, right? Kind of things like if you don't have a dedicated pfSense box or, some kind of infrastructure kind of thing, and you're like, damn, I just need some like VPN stuff going on. You just do Tailscale, seems like.
Yeah, I mean, Tailscale, Tailscale does a lot of the legwork for distributing a mesh network to multiple devices. I don't know how familiar a lot of folks here are with setting up WireGuard, but WireGuard can definitely it's easy. I'll say it's definitely easier than OpenVPN, but it definitely can get complex, especially with routing. And if you have many clients out there, it can get complicated. And there's not many commercial solutions, from what I'm aware of, that uses WireGuard as the backend that allows you to mass deploy clients and client software out to many devices. So I think that's where you could say there's a benefit to using Tailscale over just using like standard WireGuard like out of the box, because it's got that whole infrastructure and all that automation built out automatically for you.
So like, is it fair to say like WireGuard is a pretty good point-to-point replacement for like OpenVPN?
Yeah. I mean, I would think so.
Okay, so you kind of relegate WireGuard to like point-to-point versus you want a mesh, you want something fancy, you don't really want to have to do a whole bunch of infrastructure. They've kind of like done it all for you, And
if you, or you want to, you have like hundreds of clients you want to maintain, and you want to be able to like
Yeah.
set up like MFA and key rotation and access control and routing and ACLs and all that. That's where the benefit of this solution comes in.
And then reading up on Tailscale, the fact that it's self-hosted, right? That and how it answers pretty much all the questions that concerns that I had. Given that there is head-scale, and that this is virtual, it's like head-scale I would consider virtual private network, but Tailscale I would. Oh, sorry. But Tailscale I would sort of put. It's not really virtual private network. It's more like virtual confidential network, right? Because you have no privacy. You've handed all your keys to somebody else. Seems like, right?
Yeah, well, that's where that tail lock comes in, because then you get some. I believe you get some
Not really.
additional key.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, that's something. Those are something I haven't explored.
I mean, it's because you're talking about like VPN. I mean, part of the reason why people use stuff like that is that you can do stuff without permission, without having a intermediary. And so that's, I don't know. So like a true VPN sort of way to do this would be like forget about Tailscale and just use Headscale, and you get all the benefits. Seems like, right?
It just depends on your use case and things like that.
Okay. And Telnet for the win.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right. All right.
So let me ask you this: if you were going to deploy, like you're looking at this, you're playing around with Tailscale, right, yourself, and you're like, ah, man, I wouldn't really use this, like you were saying, kind of in production sense or whatever, and you were like, oh, maybe like the farthest you do would be like Headscale, like do like a self-hosted thing if you're like legit, we're going to use this. Is it something that, because maybe Headscale, it's not going to be like integrated into like pfSense, but you have to host it somewhere. Would you like host it on a DMZ that's exposed, you run this as a service, maybe as a container, Headscale in a container or something, and then you like port forward that through your edge device, your firewall or something, and that way basically it's accessible to anybody reaching through to get to it. Is that how you would do it?
Potentially, I haven't looked into how the setup is.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that's typically probably follow the same practices you would with like hosting any sort of service on the web.
And what ports would a self-hosted like Headscale need to have forwarded? Is it like just TCP or UDP, or do you know the list of ports?
I haven't deployed Headscale, so I have no idea.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you.
Cool. Well,
Great talk.
Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and feel free to hang out some more. Or if anybody's got any questions, I'll be on for a bit. I'll share the slide deck too on the Discord. But yeah,